The session for the next 45 minutes or so is all about E1 pages, don't learn the hard way. And I must admit, from my point of view, this session is all about the fact of, it's almost a layman's view of pages. It's a take on pages. Who in the room is actually using E1 pages?
We're about to.
So there's about three people using E1 pages. How many people are considering using E1 pages? So 4, 5, 6. Those people who haven't put their hand in the air, why are you considering using E1 pages? You've never heard of it? Cool, that's one of it.
You don't get a choice.
You don't get a choice.
You can get a choice.
What, to either use or not use?
Pages or menu system. They don't believe that when you go to 9.1, all you've got is pages.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting take. Interesting take. Any others? Any others? Anybody else on why they're not going to use E1 pages, or no? It's an interesting choice. I think there's a few misconceptions in the marketplace about E1 pages, and I suppose in many ways, what I'm going to try and do is clarify some of those misconceptions. I will tell you right now, I'm not technical. I've been technical for 20 years. I'm a salesman born and bred. Yeah? So E1 pages has been a bit of a thing for me to get my head around. And part of being able to come down here and do this presentation for you today has involved me trying to get my head round pages just a little bit more than I understood it before. So what we're going to try and do is, first of all, go through E1 pages, look at the user-generated content bit, what this process is all about, and try and either explore or dismiss some of the myths about this process, how we go through building pages, and I must admit there's no myth about building pages, and then actually using pages and how people are using them, and that's what I'm going to come back to you again and ask you, for those people who are actually using E1 pages, how are you using them? Who are you directing your pages to? Because there seems to be various different views as to how you would use them in an enterprise as well. And then we'll go into some of the alternative options that sit out there. What could be the future, what might be the future. And then obviously I'll tell you a bit about who we are, and then we'll go through a bit of a summary at the end. And then hopefully we can ask some questions. So, first of all, overview. Quite clearly, pages are the HTML interface for Enterprise 1. Yes, they were introduced, that's the next slide, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. However, those pages are designed externally, as we're going to see in a minute, although they are managed internally within JD Edwards. They relate to security. So you can have stuff on a page, but if you haven't got the right security for that item on a page, security will affect what you can do with that item on a page. So they are related to security, but in actual fact it's managed separately. There are example pages available out of the box, which, again, me going through this process, I've understood is it's pretty fundamental that you've got these examples to begin working with. And of course, as with all good things, when it comes down to even menus, Solution Explorer task views, and pages, it's better to have these things assigned as a role level rather than user level, although you can do both. So in many ways, what you'll do is you'll create pages for roles within the company rather than individuals within the company. So let's have a little bit more of a look at this. It was available as of Enterprise 1, version 9, tools 9.1. And just to clarify one myth, no, you don't have to use E1 pages. That might not be the case with future releases of JD Edwards, where they might force you to only use E1 pages and remove the need for Solution Explorer task views. How many people in the room have heard that particular rumour?
All heard it now.
Or that's starting the spread of a rumour here. I've heard the rumour that at some point in the future they might. It's always been my personal view anyway, that if Oracle or JD Edwards are going to introduce the use of pages, of course, they're not going to introduce a technology unless they've got a long-term determination that you should be using that technology. So yes, at 9.2 or 9.3, JD Edwards released, you might find that you've just got pages. You can only use pages. I believe that will happen. JD Edwards seems to be on this path of getting you to use pages. So if they're going to get you on that path, at the end of the day, that will be your only option at some point. E1 pages, features, it sets on pages, but you've also got this introduction of watch lists, and obviously that's linked in with one view reporting. So it all seems to be HTML intermingled. The watch lists tend to be, quite a novel type of concept of being able to alert you to stuff, have it come up on your screen as a to-do list with various urgencies. People can see what they need to do, but more importantly, they can actually see some of the stuff that hasn't been done, which they need to go away and check up on. So watch lists are quite novel. Again, they're linked into pages. It's managed, pages are managed through the user-generated content management program, the 982.400. But the security is still managed in the 950 file. Now it's interesting that there's also the introduction of the 950W file, which is meant to hold your web type security, hence the W. But right now, you can only, if you went into your JD Edwards system and you typed in the P950W, it wouldn't give you access to it. You can only get access to the P950W by going through the standard workbench and then going through one of the drop-downs at the top that gives you the ability to configure web content. And then if you notice, when you actually go in there to configure your web content or the security associated with your web content, you'll find that you're actually using a 950W W program, which then puts that output into the 950W file itself. So that's where you've got your web security coming in. Although, at the moment, this is a bit of there's not a lot going on in that file. There's not a lot of people using that web drop-down, and there's not a lot going on in that file. So, it's there, but there's not a lot of use with it at the moment.
So basically you're going to have two sets of security tables.
Yeah. But as like I said, there's not a lot going on in that file right now. So as you'll find out by the time we get to the end of this presentation, there are certain things that, I think there are certain things that have got to change moving forward in order for JD Edwards then to be able to do what I've just said, which is to get people in the long run to just use E1 pages. Now the other thing is, of course, the introduction of a new security type, H-type security. And the H-type security is actually contained into the P009502. Trust me, as a non-technical person, I love the P009502, the 982.400, the 950. Give me just a straight description of what the thing does, and I'm more than happy. The 9502 is published user-generated content, and this is where you actually set that H-type security. Now, the H-type security is who can actually manage a page, not who can view it, who can use it. So this is where you're only going to find a couple of people that have actually got H-type security set. You don't want everybody mucking around with pages. So this is, as you can see, there's a lot of it going on within this 982.400 and managing this user-generated content. So how do we get into the meat of what we call pages? Well, it's an external process. So, and this is where, if any of you start to get as confused as I was when I first started looking at this, just chuck your hand up in the air. If I can't answer it, which is highly likely, there are other people in the room that can. The good thing is that when you're shipped with 991, etc. It's shipped with 20 plus examples of what an E1 page should look like. And if you start to build your E1 pages simply by using one of those templates as your starting point, you're not going to go very, very wrong. In actual fact, there are 20 plus there simply because it looks like J.D. Edwards have thought about the different ways in which you would want to use a page and given you an example for it. And they've covered most of those eventualities. There obviously will be, as you move forward, more eventualities that you can come up with. But right now, most examples are covered within that set of templates. So that's good. It's always good to be able to start with something rather than start from scratch. And as we'll see later on, there's a good reason for that. Some of these examples are, for instance, process-driven. So you go from A to B to C to D, E to F, And some of them could be an external, so just one button on a page that takes you to an external link, like an external website or something else external to J.D. Edwards. It could be a dashboard, and this is where you're pulling up a one-view report, a one-view report as your page. Or it could be self-service. So, for instance, if you're once a month having to do your expenses, you can pull up a page, and all it's got is a button on it that says expenses. And you just press the button, get on with your expenses. So you've got various different ways in which you can use a page, and you've got various different examples of how you would then do that from a creation point of view. And what I mean in creation point of view is the fact that you're creating a DAC file. Now, J.D. Edwards have also made it easier in the fact that when you go to create your .dat file, you can do it by taking, for instance, task folders. You put in a keyword with the idea of the task folder, and as you're creating your page, then it will bring in all of the contents out of that task folder as part of creating that page for you. However, when you're creating your DAT file, is everybody still with me on this at the moment, about creating DAT files? And creating, as a result of DAT files, you then have to create zip files. And these zip files then get uploaded into J.D. Edwards, and then you do all sorts of magic things with them. There is, within J.D. Edwards, the pages generator, and this is what converts those external DAT files into zip files that are then uploaded into J.D. Edwards, which you then actually use to create the J.D. Edwards page. And this is the most fascinating thing for me, is you need what they call ASCII art skills. And we all thought ASCII went out with the ark. What do I mean by ASCII art skills? Well, what I mean is this type of thing. So what you have here is potentially a menu that goes A to A, as you can see, there's some. Now, it's what it is, what it says on the camera. It's ASCII art. But the important thing is here, there are 3 dashes and an arrow in between the characters. And it always has to be 3 dashes and an arrow. 4 dashes and an arrow will cause an error. 3 dashes without an arrow will cause an error. 3 dashes and an arrow going the wrong way will cause an error. So you have to be absolutely precise as to how you do this ASCII art. And I've yet to see, again from the layman's point of view, how you can get around that. The slightest mistake will adversely affect the output. Positioning of the characters is key, as you'll see. In actual fact, when you come to actually promote a page, this will determine what your page looks like. How you've done that little ASCII drawing. Now, there's a second level to that, which is doing this, which is again putting in code parameters that tell you what A can do, what application is it, what form is it, what version is it, what's the description. It does have neat things in the fact that you can attach a picture, you can attach an icon. And there are ways to do that. So you can actually start to generate ASCII, which in the long term generates HTML, which means that you then have a web page that looks like you want to look like. So do you see why it's now really, really, really lovely that there is a set of example templates that you can use?
Is that generated that code, or we actually type that in there? Because
When I first started looking at this, I was under the belief, and you can look at the manual and you can type it in from scratch. And I thought, what absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, if you use some of the templates, a lot of this is done for you. Yeah. So it's a good job that there are templates, and it's probably advisable that if you're going to create an email page, use a template.
So effectively what they're doing here, they're taking task views and allowing the customer to what they want.
We're going to get into whether you're actually using task views or not using task views, or whether you create them from scratch or whether you create them. That's another matter entirely. Okay. Yeah? You can see here we've also got this, again, 3 dashes and an arrow. And this is the way in which you would draw the fact that A to B and then B comes down with 2 options to go to either C or D before D goes to E, and you have to continue with your process. But you've got to get this right. It's 1 dash. It's one of those thingies on the keyboard with a comma and a ching, you know. All this has got to be right, otherwise it won't work. So yes, there's an argument that comes down to when you're using templates, you're creating pages almost from scratch. So therefore, it's theoretically an easier process to go through if you're starting from scratch. If you've got a Solution Explorer task view and you want to recreate that task view, then there's another question about how you get that task view and manipulate it into a template that in many ways you're going to end up with, okay, that's the template I want to use, this is the Solution Explorer task view I've got, which programs come off of that, how am I going to change the art on that template, because then I need to, with all of these things, I'm going to have to change all these programs so that it works like. Now, that's fine when you're working in isolation with a Solution Explorer task view. If you've got a company that's got 100, 200, 300, 2,000 users maybe, with 200 roles, that might involve, that's a considerable amount of work, trying to figure out how all this works. So that's when you might look at, okay, this is a large project.
Yeah. Is this an expansion in, I don't know, is it an expansion on the board when they first came out?
An expansion on?
The board, that JD's board. More customised.
Yeah, a bit.
We'd like to have JD go off and you can have look at the data cube, say, around by Cognos, that the user would have all this there from one screen, including the banking group. Is this the same type of thing?
I'm not, as I said before, I'm not technical.
Not really.
So,
You're talking about like 2 separate portal sets and we'll get that one.
I would think, it doesn't sound like this.
Okay. Pardon me, sorry.
No, that's fine. This is all about asking questions. This whole session is about, if you've got questions about E1 pages, and this is trying to take, strip it back to its bare bones and just ask stupid questions about it. That's what I've been doing for the past month, is asking really stupid questions about E1 pages. It's surprising the variable answers you get about it.
You can certainly put a HTML page on an E1 page.
Yes, you can.
But by itself.
Yes, yeah. So, now you've done the ASCII art, then what you actually have to do is you have to take that DAT file and run it through the pages generator. The pages generator then creates a zip file, so the zip file is a version of the DAT file, and then it's that zip file that you then take up into JD Edwards, and then it goes into the output pages, so this is now your zip file, and it's this that you then use as the basis for starting the process of creating your page. Are we all with me right now? Because this is when it starts, this is when I start to get a little bit. Because then, in order to get this, now remember the little ASCII art that we showed you? The fact that A goes to B, and when you come down to C, you can either go A or and this is the process. So this is what that looked like, that little ASCII art thing. Yeah? But in order to get from where we've just been, with an output, we have to go through this process. Now this is where the bit of the from my point of view, personal view only, feel free to argue with me, this is where I think this starts to get a little bit mad, to be brutal. You've designed your page, so you've either created one from new, you've either used a template, or you've copied a page that you already had and manipulated it in a small way. You used that to generate your zip file, you've then uploaded it into J. Edwards, you've added your images, your JavaScript, you've created all your various bits and pieces as part of that upload. And bear in mind that when I was talking about the fact that you can put a keyword and a task ID as part of that upload, J. Edwards automatically brings in that task view as part of that DAT file into the zip file. So all of this happens as part of this upload process. But then you have to go through a change management process so that that page then becomes approved for use within the system. Great, well, good, we can start using it then. No. You've approved it for use, but you can't start to use it yet. You've actually got to activate it. So you've now activated the page, right? It's now activated for viewing and use. Right, now I can start using my page. Brilliant. No, not quite. You've got to publish it. So you've then got to choose who is allowed to view and use the page. Right, good. Oh, now I've published it. Now everybody knows that when you publish something, everybody can look at it and start to use it on the rest of it. No. Because we've still got to promote it. You've then got to copy that metadata to different path codes before you can actually start doing it. Now the problem is that you have to go through this process of designing it, uploading it, approving it, activating it, publishing it, promoting it with every single page. So when it comes down to answering your question about Solution Explorer task views, if you've got a task view that has got subfolders underneath it, and underneath those subfolders you've got more task views with subfolders, you have to create an individual page for the task folder, the subfolders, and the subfolders to the subfolders.
Sounds like too much room
So immediately you can see that this, when you actually come down to doing this, and you're trying to replace what you've already got, this could potentially become quite a little bit of a large amount of work to be done.
So what happens if you then want to change that page? Do you have to start from the design process?
If you want to start from here,
All the way through. If you start with that file, make a change. Right.
and if you forget one of those little dashes, or a comma,
That work.
you'll find out there it doesn't work. So you go back to here and change, and make the change, so it does work. Yeah.
So does anybody come in with a Visio add-in that builds that file for you from a flowchart?
We're going to go into alternative options in a minute. Yeah. So this is as you can see from my point of view, layman's point of view. This is a bit of a E1 pages love the idea. HTML love it. Interface love it. The fact that you can do different things on an E1 page, for depending on what you actually want to achieve out of it, love it. This nightmare. So, when you actually want to then create new pages or copy it, you can take a page that's already been zipped, and you then create that new page. You can understand. You have to go through the same process again. Take the zip page, run it through the approval, sign the page, etc. Then you go through the user-generated content management profile manager type thing we talked about before, 982400. That completes the process, and then you take it from pending to approved. And then you go through this change control, so that then so you've set up some rules about what happens during that control process. But you can see you have to go through all of that again. Yeah. So, there are some gotchas in there. What do I need to look out for? So, first of all, I found out recently that pages do take into account security. We know that. So even if you're using E1 page, but you're not allowed, that the security defines that you as a user or you as a role cannot use a particular program, even if that program appears on your page, you will not be able to use it. Because security will dictate whether you can use it or not. What you're likely to find is that that option on your page is greyed out. Blech. At the moment, apparently there is a process of doing it, but at the moment, I will say, you can't hide the button. The page is static, it's not dynamic. So for instance, if you go in, once you've built your page, you can go away and change security, for instance, but in changing that security, you won't change the page. You might grey out the option, but you won't alter the look of that page just because you've changed what you can do behind it. So it's static rather than dynamic. If you do use Fine Cut as part of your Solution Explorer task views, you've got to create a different page for every time you've used Fine Cut. So most people have used Solution Explorer task views and then altered them slightly with the Fine Cut options to be able to give them just slightly different views to different people. You're going to have to create an individual page depending on all of those different views that you want to give to people. And of course, the external design means an external process for identifying what is on that page. I mean, everybody uses OMW. Yeah? And I think, from my point of view, the people I talk to in the JD Edwards world, they seem to like OMW and the ability to promote objects like that. It seems to be one of the good things about JD Edwards. Of course, this is foreign to what you understand by promoting stuff through the OMW. This is external to JD Edwards, not that internal process that you've got there. How do you use pages? Well, this is where there are two schools of thoughts. As an organisation, you might decide that E1 pages are yours. That's what you're going to do. And therefore, you actually make the conscious decision that when you're going to go down that route, that you're going to invest the time that you obviously concede it's going to take in order to create an E1 pages type of structure. Is there anybody here in the room who has is working for a company who has a declared route to go just E1 pages in the future? No? So I would guess, and I'll ask again in a minute, just so that we've got audience participation. I'll ask again. Most people are going, okay, E1 pages had their place, JD Edwards Solution Explorer task views had their place. So right now I'm going to look at what I do, and for those places where I see I can use E1 pages, then I'm going to start to use E1 pages. So for instance, sales, time entry, where you need somebody to go to a page and do something. So for instance, in manufacturing, where you might have a process that you want that operator to go through, well, they don't really need the ability to have Solution Explorer task view and then be able to go from one task view to another task view to another task view. All they need to be doing is they need to be given a page with two buttons on it that says when you've pressed button A, wait for 5 seconds and then press button B. That's it. Simple sort of stuff where the operator is using JD Edwards but in a very simplistic way. Yeah? So you might say for hardcore users you're looking at Solution Explorer task views where people need to expand options to expand options to expand options, but where you can actually drive a simple process where you can give that external link or that 1 or 2 or 3 buttons on a page or whatever, you can do that. If you are going to take a decision to go for an enterprise deployment, you can. But so far to date, we've seen very few enterprise-wide deployments. Now, by enterprise-wide, if you've got 50 JD Edwards users in your enterprise, then that might be quite possible to deploy pages in that instance. When I'm talking about enterprise-wide, you know, when you're talking about the global JD Edwards users in this world, there's quite an investment of time if they're going to change 2,000, 4,000, 5,000, 20,000 users over to using pages. And really, at the end of the day, for the world to adopt pages, they have to make it so that those corporations, those large corporations, find that step towards E1 pages as an easy step to make, rather than one that is going to involve a serious amount of time. Because for implementation, a project will be required, and if it's a larger project, a serious amount of time will need to be set aside for that project. Static versus dynamic, we've already mentioned. However, there is the option for this tab for multiple pages per role. So you can give a user multiple pages, and they just tab between them. So it can be done, but it's not a cascading thing, or a carousel thing, or whatever. It's page, 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 page. So, are there alternative options? Right now, who thinks the pages is really easy? Concept's lovely, isn't it? Needs a bit of work on the old, engine side. Yeah, at the moment we've got a Ferrari body, but it looks like a mini engine inside it. And what we actually need is a nice Ferrari engine inside the Ferrari, and then it'll work fine. Yeah? What are the alternative options? Well, you saw there were some interesting issues going through that process. Now, unbelievably, we have actually had one option, which is quite interesting. But we've built into Task View Manager an icon. So first of all, Task View Manager gives you the ability to get a graphic display of what your task views look like. So you can see your task view folders, and you can see your task view subfolders, you can see the folders underneath that and the rest of it. Now, there's an icon that allows you to create a DAT file from your selected task folders. Now, the key thing with us is the fact that what we then do is we create all of the DAT files associated with all of the subfolders. So as opposed to you having to go through each task view folder and then create another DAT file for the subfolder and then another DAT file, we actually go through that process of creating all of those DAT files for you. Disadvantage is, simply, we do create the basic ASCII art, but it's sequential. So you'll go A to B to C to D, E to F, G to D, So there's none of that angled stuff where you've got options to go to. We won't create that. We'll create it sequentially. But it does save a huge manual process of creating all those DAT files for the individual subfolders. You still have to go through a file by file upload into the pages generated. But it's an option. If you actually want to change some of your task view, your Solution Explorer task views, and change them into pages, and of those pages you actually want to include the subfolders and the rest of it, this will make it simpler. It simplifies the process. And each task view is then linked to the other task view, so you can actually see how they cascade out within the pages. So all of that's built in. So all of those little bits and pieces that you see at the top, all of those are automatically built in as part of that page creation, or that DAT file creation. There is another option that's being produced in the US at the moment by a company called the CD Group. They call it E1 Page Studio. This is a program that runs within JD Edwards. It comes with some user-defined styles. So again, JD Edwards supplies these templates, and what CD Group is they've actually provided some of these styles as well. So you can have explosion styles, all sorts of bits and pieces that you can do. There's no need to learn ASCII art, because that will do it for you. You can globally change content, so if stuff changes by using the CD group in One Page Studio, what you can do is you can actually explode out global changes to it.
Stephen, I can see Oracle's next acquisition.
You can see
Oracle's next acquisition.
what us.
No,
Just to give you an example what it looks like, so this is an E1 page. You see, this isn't too bad, is it? It doesn't look too bad. You know, this is a process-driven thing. Yeah, we call it instant master. You know, you've got all this stuff here. A nice little picture of the background. Data processing. You know, I could do this. I'd get used to that. Or it could look like this. So you've got your little buttons here. Yeah, nice background picture to it. Or you go like this, which means that you can explode each one of these sections out. As you can see that, from my point of view, pages actually make quite a good bit of sense. They make it, you know, in this world of lovely graphic interfaces and all this sort of stuff you can do in the web, lovely, you know, things that make you go, oh, that's cool. This actually is quite cool. But it's that background process behind it that rather takes the edge off the cool. So, what about the future? Personal view, I suppose. We'll open it up to the audience as well. Future of pages. Do we think they ought to be more dynamic? They're static at the moment. So if you make a change in the back scene, it's not replicated in the front. It's got to be made dynamic. Integrate page designer. What is it with this ASCII art thing? You have to create a DAG file, which then you have to put into a zip file thingy, and the zip file thingy you then have to upload, approve, publish, promote, and all the other bits and pieces with it. What is with that? Can it not be integrated with OMW? Can it sit alongside OMW? Can it not operate like the OMW so that it's sort of like what everybody's used to doing? Can it not do that? Should it be cross-platform? I think, personally, I think there needs to be a big rethink of E1 page development. And if they're going to do some thinking, then I don't think it can come down the line until, you know, next year at the very earliest of how you do this. If they're going to convince the big players in the JD Edwards market from a global perspective to convert to E1 pages, they've got the cool factor, but what they don't have is the ease to get to the cool factor. They need to make that better. They need to make it integrated. They need to move it away from something that used to belong to something else that has been shoehorned with a very large shoehorn into being able to be used with JD Edwards. They need to make it more JD Edwards. Make it more for JD Edwards. And that's my personal thing. And that's looking into the crystal ball. Anybody any other views? No?
Sounds like they just released it the way they developed it without doing anything to make it user friendly. So it's coming out straight out of their development, I suggest.
Well, E1 Pages, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but E1 Pages was used with other systems before JD Edwards. It wasn't called E1 Pages. It was linked to EBS maybe or something like that.
Is it part of PeopleSoft or something?
PeopleSoft it could have been.
They had something similar.
But that's what happened, was that I think Oracle, not JD Edwards, but Oracle have looked at saying how they can bring some commonality between some of the platforms they've got, and they've looked at this thing that they used with PeopleSoft and gone, look, we can use that with JD Edwards. How do we make it work? And how they make it work is to create external files, and then all they have to do is to work out how to get an external file into JD Edwards and make that work. But it's all a bit of a, well, Heath Robinson, really, isn't it? You know, packing tape and a bit of cardboard and a brown paper over here. The thing is, and really, from a layman's point of view, really, by the time you put the packing paper and the cardboard together with the brown thing, it looks all right. It looks actually quite useful.
So if the example pages, or any of the example pages are exactly what you want, can you just use them as they...
Pretty much. Pretty much. All you have to do is you have to go through there, and basically your editing skills come down to, do you want A to run the P104 or the P105? What version of that? You know? That type of thing.
Change the screen colours or something like that.
It's really simple. You know? It's, yeah. And pretty much, I've looked at the templates, and pretty much the templates cover a lot of what you want. And it comes up with neat icons, where you can put the icons. And people are becoming more and more used to nowadays, not relating words with something that you want to do, but more relating a picture with something that you want to do. You know, but how many people have got iPhones in the room? And how many people actually pick up an iPhone and go, right, I'm going to try and find the navigation app and look for the word navigation? No, not in a million years. It's the picture with the compass on it. Oh, thank you very much. And so more people are becoming used to visualising rather than reading. So E1 Pages is a natural step forward that enables you to do that. And they give you the icon libraries. You upload the icon libraries as part of subfolders, and off you go, thank you. All works very nice, thank you.
Would you see Pages as a way of enforcement, reading, putting more emphasis on a process that they need to follow, like that you need to do step A before B?
Again, you look at the way in which you want to use a page, and if you want a user to follow a process, what better way than, you know, you constrict them into them doing exactly what you want them to do in a particular order. And E1 Pages allows you to do that. Absolutely.
But it doesn't actually check to see if it does step B before C, it just gives them all the options.
I'm not sure whether there's a way of me actually being able to control the fact that you can't go to step C until you've done step B.
No, that's fine.
Because how it looks, you click a button, it opens a new tab with your banner PO, for example. Does it black out that icon once you've done that step?
That's a very good question. Anyone know the answer?
I don't imagine it would. They're not dynamic. That's the whole thing. It's a dynamic page you might be able to do it with Ajax running in the background, but it's not.
Is it solutions for all pages, or can you use both at the same time?
I think it's,
You use both.
you can use both within an enterprise. Yes. Yeah.
Typically,
Why
you
I
want
think-
E1 Pages,
why would you
you want to
want to?
restrict them away from task view.
Sorry?
You want to use E1 Pages, you want to restrict the end user away from task view.
Yeah, that's why I said, why would you want to? I mean, if you're going to give someone an E1 page, you're giving it for a reason. And one of the reasons would be to actually move them away from using it under a task view.
But you might, you want to phase that out over a period of time. You might have some simple processes where that work really well.
Yeah,
And
and
finance, you want to do everything.
And from an introduction point of view, yes, it would phase it in where you can have the simplicity and then work up to complicated, rather than saying that to an audience of J. Edwards users. No, forget all of that simplicity working up. Start from the most complicated point and work your way down. Because that's the way we're used to doing it. But like typically you go, okay, that group of 5 people over there, they only ever do one thing. Yeah? Create an E1 page with the one thing on it, and that's it. Don't give them anything else other than that page, and they'll be happy as Larry. Because all they do is they come in, they upload the browser, it opens up with the E1 page, and they click the thing they need to do. Done. And then you work up.
Is any different, just giving them one option when they sign in, they've got one thing they can do?
It's like I said, you can use all, you can change stuff so that you can use you can make it more user friendly. Got a picture of
A
it.
bit like a mobile phone, you click on an icon. It's the same concept, but different group.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But why? It's about moving it on and making it a little bit more, what we're used to today. Solution Explorer task views have been around for how long? 9's been out. A few years now, isn't it? 3 years? 4 years? You would unbelieve how much the world has moved on in the last 3 years from what it understood as a concept 3 years ago to what we use just as a matter of course now. And I guarantee that when we go out of this room, if you think about how you used to do things 3 years ago and how you do things now, you would go, my God, that's changed, doesn't it? It creeps up on you, it changes, and you don't know it's happening.
So do we still have the ability to create a URL to take you to a specific app and version, like we do it in 9?
Think so, don't we?
Because then I would have thought, so for us, for example, we've got a really basic business process mapping tool, and our staff are now starting to look at this, and it supports hyperlinks and so on. So for us, because we've got about 10 major systems and another 20 on secondary systems, most of our processes go from one system to another anyway. So for us, it would be better to use that tool and put hyperlinks to the JDE option. So when it gets to the bit that says do this in E1, they click on it, as opposed to giving them a page which everything has to be within E1.
Yeah.
You can give a page, it doesn't necessarily have to be within E1.
No, but I mean, all the stuff on this page is E1
to something external to E1. So the E1 pages do have the flexibility, we can do all sorts of stuff with it.
And your question, Mike, is like with the approvals coming through an email, it's got a link, it's a URL link, goes straight back into opens up that particular page in E1. You still have to put your credentials in it. In 9.1 it creates a brand new instance of it. So it duplicates so if you've already got E1 open, it'll open up another instance of it with your credentials, and then it'll shut that down. So it does allow you to link back to the URL. Like it is.
Food for thought, though. So I'm already 2 minutes over time, so this is going to be very short. This is who we are, we're a global company, and we're all over the world. We use what we like to call franchises agencies to run some of our operations in the world. Like, for instance, Myriad IT handle everything that we've got down here in Australia. They're really cool. We use a company called GTS, Global Technology Solutions, to handle all of our stuff in the Middle East. They're really cool too, and you have to be really cool to be in the Middle East. And this is where I'm based, up here in the UK, and that's where our development department is. We have various things all across the US, as you would imagine, and we've got these support desks. That means that we can basically handle any element of support in any time zone across the world. Part of the JD Alliance, and you've probably all heard of the JD Alliance in one shape or form. A group of vendors that have come together, RS Smart, who are here today, are part of the JD Alliance. All of our stuff's already gone through the Oracle OBI, integrated with Oracle. I love the way Oracle say you've got to be OBI, you've got to be integrated with Oracle. Give us the money. Okay. And the thing is that all of us vendors do literally go, yeah, okay, and we give them all the money. So thank you very much, customers, for you giving us the money for us to be able to give it back to Oracle. All of our stuff's under patent or going through patent pending, and we have a vast amount of knowledge from JD Edwards within the company and within all these franchises that we've got. We also do stuff for World and in Business Suite, just as a bylaw. These are some of our customers, as you can see: Simplot, here, Fisher Paykel, Warnpool, Durham, Bay. But also added with Middle East, US. So this is just a small selection of some of the companies that are our customers, Baxter Healthcare. Obviously one of those large JD Edwards global customers that I've been talking about. It's the Baxters of this world that JD Edwards need to convince that E1 Pages is a fantastic idea across the enterprise before the whole world of JD Edwards will move lock, stock and barrel to E1 Pages. So pages are here to stay. That's what I said right at the very beginning. They're here. JD Edwards will get you to use them. And at some point, you'll have a version of JD Edwards that will come out that will force you to use them exactly the way you said right at the very beginning. Current adoption is slow, but it's increasing. It's getting bigger. When people are looking at the processes they've got within the company, they're introducing E1 Pages. But it's complex. There are alternatives.
But in order for everybody to adopt in-one pages, there has to be fundamental change in the way in which you create those pages. They look cool, the creation of them is a nightmare. And you have to understand where to use them to get the best out. Does it mean the end of Solution Explorer? I'll leave you with that. Obviously, if you want more advice on pages, please go to Myriad. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.